Hey, how's it going, Grayson?
Good.
I just tried to hit him with a little bit of the Christmassy stuff. That's kind of a Christmassy music, right?
Yeah, it's like kind of like funky a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit funky.
It's
a little bit Christmassy.
Christmas or something. I don't know.
Maybe a little bit. So anyway, we are prepared to. We want to talk a little bit Christmas here today.
Yeah.
And because we've had the sermon series these last couple of weeks. Who needs Christmas? We're talking about Christmas. It's Christmas season. We're full on, and hopefully you guys are ready for Christmas. I don't know if you've done your shopping already. You might be a little bit behind.
Yeah, Amazon working overtime. It's
that they are. Yeah. You got that right. So you better get that stuff to your door, man.
For real.
But we're excited about Christmas, obviously, for way bigger reasons than any of those things.
Oh yeah.
One of the first things I'm excited about Christmas, although not the most important thing I'm excited about for Christmas, is Christmas always means treats that you don't get throughout the rest of the year.
Oh, so true.
Yeah. So
do the Maoris have any special Christmas treats?
Oh, we do. I don't know when this got started, but not too long ago, Renee started making chocolate-covered pretzels, and I'm just like, where have you been all my life?
Sweet and salty.
Yeah. So the funny thing about it, right, is we actually white chocolate covered pretzels.
I love white chocolate.
And I'm not a big white chocolate person, but there's something perfect about the overly sweetness of white chocolate and the saltiness of a pretzel that it just is
Chef's
perfect
kiss.
Together.
Yeah.
They're just a match made in heaven, like chocolate and peanut butter.
True.
So, and so there's that, and then probably my most favorite, Renee makes the most amazing no-bake cookies, and I love me some no-bake cookies.
They're pretty famous. I've heard about them. I've never had them, but
they're pretty
I keep
incredible.
hearing good stuff about them.
Yeah. So how about you guys? You guys have any special treats that you guys do around Christmas time?
Yeah. The Saturday after Thanksgiving is Cookie Day in the Harris household.
Oh, nice.
And we make these like little Christmas sugar cookies, like the recipes from like the 1940s, and our family's been making them for generations. We have like the original recipe card, like on like an index card from like the a bygone era. So
right, yeah.
But they're like really good. They're just like these little sugar cookies with like a red hot on top.
So
like a little Christmas tree. So I've made a lot of them. So
you've made a few in your time, huh? Just a few.
And then my grandma Becky always makes these gingerbread cookies. Ooh. And they're like world renowned.
Okay.
They're real good. And then like we don't play around with like, oh, like we'll do a cute face on them. It's like, no,
we don't.
It's so good. You just put like this royal icing on it. And that's all you need. You don't need a face on that gingerbread because you don't. Gone so quick.
Just gonna eat it. I feel like we need a swap, right? You bring some gingerbread cookies. I'll bring some no bakes. We'll have a little cookie swap.
We should do that.
I think we need to do that. So that's happening. Anyway, you guys are welcome for that. Just little tidbit of extra information for you today. But we're gonna have a Christmas cookie swap. So maybe you should find a friend and do the classic treat that always happens for you and your family. I've got some extended relatives that grew up in Ohio, but even now that they don't live in Ohio, they live in other parts of the country, always do Buckeyes because their friends like in Texas and all these other places are like, what is this thing? I've never seen this thing before. And it's like, well, Buckeyes are a normal thing for us, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so a little peanut butter and chocolate dipped things, and apparently they're huge hits. So I got extended relatives that carry the Buckeye traditions all over the country. So that's an important one too.
Yeah, Buckeye strong. So.
Yes, good stuff.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
And they're just delicious. So
yeah. So there's just a little bit of a Christmas welcome to you, and so. Grayson, we've had this series that's been going on, Who Needs Christmas? And I think it's really led to some really great stuff. I know it's led to some really cool conversations, even just amongst the staff here.
Yeah.
And you and I sitting down and talking about some things too. I'm excited to talk about this today.
Yeah, the series has been really good, and like the question's like a little jarring at first. It's like, who needs Christmas? It's
right.
Like, oh, well, who hurt you? Like, what present did you not get that you're like upset about Christmas?
Right, exactly.
But it's been really good just to like get Greg's perspective and to really think like, man, Christmas is something really we all need, and that's what the whole first week was about.
Yeah.
Was that the world needed Christmas.
It did.
Greg talked about how the Christmas story doesn't start with Mary and Joseph in a manger, but actually goes back hundreds of years to Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah, all the way back.
And God makes a promise with Abraham that he would give him a land and a people, and that he would bless the world through his descendants. So Greg really walked through a lot of Israel's history from Abraham up to Jesus. And the whole time, you're just thinking, like, how is this people gonna bless anyone?
Right, anybody at all.
And and so Greg really walked through a lot from Israel's past, and like just the fact that like Abraham and Sarah couldn't have kids, and then it was just a lot. And the whole time you're like wondering, like, okay, like how on earth is God gonna bless the whole world through these people?
Yeah, I love that we're sitting here honing in on the part of that promise where it's going to be that this people, this nation that is going to be raised up and brought from the descendants of Abraham is going to be a nation that blesses other people. Because I think a lot of times when we think about this story, when we talk about this story, we tend to hone in on the fact that, and spend a lot of focus on the fact that they didn't have any kids and they were already older. So how were they possibly going to even have one kid, let alone enough kids to, outnumber the stars and more than, the grains of sand that you won't possibly be able to count how many descendants come from Abraham. And I think it's reasonable that we get, hyper focused on that because Abraham was hyper focused on that. Yeah. Him and Sarah were both like, how is this possible? It's not going to happen.
How are you going to do this?
Right. But I think the really interesting part that is often maybe missed about the promise is about how this nation was going to be a blessing to other nations and to ultimately the entire world, because that was a very foreign concept to them at the time. Like, nations did not bless other nations.
No.
It wasn't a thing that they did. And I think we see that part of the promise and maybe kind of overlook it a little bit because we see it through 21st century American goggles. It's like, well, of course, nations, they bless each other. They may have improper motives, but, we help each other out in wars, and we have the United Nations. We try to send resources and all kinds of different things to other allied nations and stuff like that. And that's kind of a normal practice, a thing that we understand. But for them at that time, like, this kind of thing just did not happen.
No.
It was not a thing. You pillaged and plundered other nations, but you didn't bless other nations for sure.
Might made right.
Yeah, might made right for sure. It was, you were going to join us either by your own choosing or by our force. Whatever you pick, that's fine, but you're going to join us, because it was all about, we're going to make our nation the biggest and the baddest that it could possibly be, and we're going to just absorb everybody in our way.
Yeah, they weren't worried about blessing. They were worried about power.
No, in fact, when you ran out of supplies, you just went and took them from someone else if you had the power to do so.
Right.
And that's kind of how things worked back then. So the concept that this nation that, Abraham and Sarah didn't even believe, had every reason to not believe could even happen, first of all. But then also you're telling me that this nation's going to do something that no nation has ever done before. Nations don't do this. Like, it just had to seem to them completely unrealistic. And yet we learned that through their faith that they still they believed that it could happen because God told them it could happen. But they had no frame of reference for seeing something like this take place.
Yeah. And Greg really walked through the whole time. It's it's pretty hopeless that this nation is going to be able to bless anyone, because it it starts off as they can't even have a kid, and then it's just like a tiny family, and then eventually they grow, but then they're in slavery, and then they're in countless wars, and eventually the kingdom gets divided, and they're in exile, and they're wandering in the wilderness, before they're even a kingdom, and it's like all this stuff keeps happening, and it's like, oh, they get conquered, now they're living in Babylon, there's no hope. Greg said multiple times that it was inconceivable. Princess
inconceivable.
Bride, shout out there. But it was inconceivable that this nation would be able to bless the world.
Right. Yeah, because they're constantly under foreign occupation. They're constantly, going through this cycle of walking away and trying to come back and walking away and coming back. And it seems completely ridiculous that this nation, of all people out there in the world, not the big, powerful, strong nations that are going around ruling and conquering, maybe you might think that they could do that. If they build enough power and wealth, they might actually be able to use that power for good. It's not that. You got this little fledgling nation that is constantly just up and down and up and down. How are they ever going to be able to bless anyone?
Yeah, and then even between the Old and New Testament, there's 400 years of silence where there's no prophets, where there's no books of the of Scripture written, and they're waiting. They get conquered by Greece, who gets conquered by Rome, and they're sitting there like, okay, like we literally are servants of the Roman Empire now. Yeah. How is our nation that's been conquered by one of the mightiest empires that's ever been?
Yeah.
How on earth are we going to bless the world?
Right, yeah. How are we ever even going to get out of the situation we're in now, let alone have any type of authority to be able to bless or do anything for anybody else?
And into that hopelessness, a baby's born.
Yeah.
And really, like, we see that God is so faithful to his promises because God sends Jesus to bless the whole world through him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how he brings about, fulfilling that promise of blessing the entire world, because now, we get to look back on that situation and see the tremendous amount of blessing that has occurred as a result of Jesus in his own personal lifetime. The people that were blessed and encouraged, healed, all these things while he was here. And then for him to do what he did, to die on the cross, to pay a penalty for our sin that we could not pay for ourselves, to restore a relationship that we didn't have the ability to really restore. It's a tremendous amount of hope that they just had to have been feeling like wasn't ever going to come back. They had this tremendous amount of hope when those promises were given. And even during the ups and downs periods of Israel's history, you had, like you said, you had the prophets that were still kind of there saying, hey, look, if you get things back together, like God still is going to make good on this promise. So let's come back to following him. Come on. And they would up and down. But then you have this 400 years of just complete silence. And it's like they are probably at their lowest point of hopelessness, saying like, it's just, I don't know if this is ever going to happen,
Yeah.
And boom, a baby's born, which is also part of it, because like he didn't come the way that they expected him to.
Yeah.
So now you're also kind of like, oh man, is this really what's going to happen? But he just starts to spread that hope. And then as we could jump into kind of the second week, that talks a little bit even more about that sacrifice that was made in order to give us that hope.
Yeah. So I think that's a great transition. So first Greg talks about how the world needed Christmas, but then he talks about how God needed Christmas.
Yeah, which is an interesting statement.
Yeah, it's like at first like, whoa, does God need?
What's he really need from any of us? Okay,
But really, the world needed a demonstration, that God loved us, and God needed Christmas because he wanted to show us how much he loved us, so that we could believe it.
Right.
And really, God removed all the barriers for us so that we could see it, believe it, and it's crazy.
It is. It really is crazy. I mean, and it's, again, it's a weird statement to say that God needed something as if like he, wasn't complete or something somehow. But that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is he, at some point, it seems as though he recognized, like, and I think this was always part of the plan, obviously from the beginning of time. So he knew. It's not like he just came to this conclusion, like, oh man, these people keep messing up, and now I'm gonna have to do something about it. He knew all along that he was gonna need a demonstration to show us how much he loved us and how he was for us. We talk about being for around here, to show us that he was for us and wanted to restore that relationship for us. you talk about removing barriers that we didn't have the power to remove.
Yeah.
He stepped in and removed those barriers. And again, providing us a tremendous amount of hope that we so desperately need. And I think is often associated with this time of year in Christmas. But we needed it so badly, and he knew that.
And, we've read a lot of Andy Stanley books and listened to his podcast. Love Andy. Andy, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on sometime.
There you go. I'm sure he's listening.
Yeah. Greg quotes Andy, and he says, how would we know where we stood with God if God had not come to stand with us?
Yeah. It's such a good statement.
It really is, because my small group, we're going through the book of Hebrews, about to wrap that up. And I believe it's Hebrews 4. It talks about how we have a high priest who knows what we're going through.
Yeah.
And because, Jesus was a man and was tempted and, was hungry and tired, because he understands that, we can go to him. And, it's like, where do we stand with God? Well, we know because God sent Jesus to die for us. You talk about being for, Jesus died to show us that he was for us.
Right. Yeah.
And because of that, we could go to him, we can trust him, and we can have a right relationship with him. Greg said that nothing shows love more than sacrifice. And you're a father, you have 3 adorable kids, you have an awesome wife, and I know there's nothing you wouldn't sacrifice for them.
Right. Yeah. And you're absolutely right, because I would do anything for them. And it's an interesting thing, this idea of sacrifice, because while it is a tremendous sacrifice, and I'm not talking about me, like what Jesus did for us in leaving heaven and not coming down as this powerful king, but coming down as a baby and having to grow and mature and depend on other people and things like that. It's a tremendous deal that he did that. But I also think of it in context of, me with my own kids, right? I know that there are plenty of people out there, and I know some who have kids, and having kids is a tremendous sacrifice for them, because they kind of go around like, man, I wish I could be doing the things that I really want to be doing, but I can't because I've got kids. So like, I can't do that, but I really wish I could be doing these other things, but I've got to sacrifice all that in order to, raise my kids and be there for them and stuff. Like, I just have a hard time. I just don't view it that way, because to me, it is a sacrifice. Sure, I'm sure there are things that I've missed out on or not been able to do because of, wanting to be there for my kids, but it's no burden. It's not a burden to give up really anything for them. And there's nothing that like you said, there's nothing I wouldn't give up for them, because I love them and I care about them. And really being with them is more important to me than doing other things.
Yeah.
And not because I, feel this burden to sacrifice for them, but because that's what I want to do.
Right.
And I feel like in a way better, much more perfect, complete way, I can't help but think that Jesus probably has a similar thought when it came to the sacrifice he made on our behalf, because for him, I just can't help but think that he's, when it came to time to have to make that sacrifice, it's like, well, yeah, that's what I got to do. I mean, these are my people. I love them, and there's nothing that I wouldn't do for them. And again, we talk about being for, he, in the biggest way possible, showed that he was for us, because, and I just can't help but think of it that way, of him kind of just being like, yes, it's no tremendous burden for me to give up whatever I got to give up in order to be there for my people.
Yeah.
And that's just a beautiful thing, I think, about, the God that we serve, and the Jesus that came and made that sacrifice for us.
Yeah. And, it's like, obviously, like, if, someone was coming to hurt your family, you would sacrifice yourself to save them or whatever.
Protect them.
But the crazy thing is, like, we probably wouldn't do that for, like, someone who's like really hurt us or our family, or, someone we're just not crazy about. But like, that's exactly what like Jesus does in his sacrifices. Greg talked about Romans a lot, where it talks about like, while we were sinners, while we were ungodly, Jesus made this sacrifice, this ultimate display of his love for us, even while we were, spitting in his face.
Yeah.
It's insane to think that like that is a love that everyone should want.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I say in a much more perfect way than even myself, like with my own kids, right? Because of course I would do that for my children. Like,
oh yeah.
I would love to think that I would do that for other people too, but I don't, who knows how I would really respond in those types of situations. Mm-hmm. But that's exactly what Jesus did. It's like he took people that, one day would eventually love him, and people that, would deny him and hate him and treat him like dirt, people that were, and all kinds of that, and just said, you know what? I'm going to make that sacrifice. I'll do it for all of them. And he was willing to pay that penalty for people that were spitting in his face, like you said, that didn't want anything to do with him, people that will live many, many years of their lives not wanting anything to do with him, maybe even fighting against him actively. Yeah. He still laid his life on the line for all those people.
Saul,
myself
who
included.
Became Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament.
Yeah, exactly. Persecuting.
Yeah, killing people who followed Jesus, and then, realized how much Jesus truly loved him, even though he did those things.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a life-changing thing.
Yeah. So who needs Christmas?
Yeah. Well, apparently the world needed Christmas.
Yeah.
And
God did. As
we found out, God needed Christmas too.
And this upcoming Sunday, we're going to be talking about how we needed Christmas as well. So you don't want to miss that. Yeah, we'd love to see you 9:30 and 11 in the building. We'd also love to see you online at faircreek.online.church. We'd love to see you there.
And then, Grayson, we got Christmas Eve services coming up too.
Yeah,
tell them about that.
Christmas Eve services. We have one on the 23rd at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And then two on Christmas Eve, the 24th, 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. So we'd love to see you there. Invite coworker, friend, family member.
Yeah.
We'd love to see everyone there. Those are also going to be online as well.
Right. And you can even find invite cards, invite images on our app too. If you're if you call Faircreek home and you know about the app and you have that on your phone, man, download those things and share them on social media, send them to a friend, invite somebody to join you for a Christmas Eve service. Yeah. We would love to see you guys there.
Yep. And then we would love to hear from you as well. So let us know those Christmas treats that you only get this time of year. We would love to hear about some of those treats and traditions that you celebrate with your family.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to know what are those things that like only come out around Christmas time, right? I mean, Grayson, you said gingerbread cookies. You guys don't eat them all throughout the year, right?
No, that
only comes out at Christmas time. And so what are those things that you only get to do at Christmas time and you really look forward to it? Maybe it's a special treat that you make or a tradition that you have. Yep. We would love to hear about it. And let us be one of the first ones to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.